on, guys? This is Carl with the Racerred channel, heading back to camp right now. Everything is very slick, muddy. These roots are a force to be reckoned with right now. Got pretty far back in here today. I was just thinking about astronauts and how they explore away from Earth and what kind of person it takes to do that. Like, I think about that, like, yeah, anybody can say, oh, I do it, absolutely. But when it comes down to it, when it really comes down to it, like the thought of rocketing out of space, out of the Earth's atmosphere into space, and then leaving everything down here behind for the great abyss, that is terrifying. And I was watching Ad Astra, has Brad Pitt in it. I was watching that in the Ambo last night, and it really reminded me of just how terrifying it is. Like, even watching that movie, I'm like, man, this is scary. Imagine being that far out of no man's land. And really, that's what dirt biking is to a certain extent. You're just going way out here, away from civilization, away from the world that you know. Because, let's face it, the world we know has other people in it. It has structures and highways, roads, vehicles, vehicle traffic, hospitals if you need them. This is a different world. And to anybody who hasn't come out here this far, I mean, I don't think they could truly understand. And there's lots of people who do this, but they're definitely a special breed. And I wouldn't consider myself to be, I don't know, that wild in terms of like distances traveled. Generally, if I'm doing a solo ride, I'll keep it reasonable. I'll keep it to a point where I know that I can hike back if I need to. I think that's why you do see people parking 10 yards away from the highway on the way out to places like this, in which I absolutely did see somebody pitching a tent 10 yards away from the highway in a big paved parking lot of camp spots, which to each his own. If you enjoy doing that, then that's what you enjoy. I'm not bashing it. I'm just saying I understand it. I totally understand that. Some people don't like to be away from the amenities, the niceties. And I don't either. That's the reason I have the ambulance instead of pitching a tent. I like having a structure around me when I go back to camp. I just think it's interesting to hear about that kind of stuff. I've listened to interviews with actual astronauts. The problems that they talk about in space are pretty strange as well, because of course you deal with muscle issues when you don't have any or much gravity on them at all, if any, and so you have to work out inside this spacecraft. Well, basically you can damage the aircraft structurally just by the motion of you running or working out, which I didn't realize that is an actual issue that they've had to deal with, because originally they thought they could just put a treadmill and some exercise stuff in there, but actually you can't do that because there's nothing pushing against the structure. There's no outside gravity on the structure either, so it wants to come apart if you're smacking against it really a whole bunch of times like that, the running motion. which is, it's scary considering your life depends on that structure. Seems bizarre to me that they would have issues with that, but they do. So now the astronauts use like resistance bands, I think, and mostly they've got exercises that are less impact and easier on the aircraft. Just random tidbits of knowledge. That's something that stuck with me. It's not like I know a whole bunch about this stuff. I'm not extremely smart. I just listen to a lot of podcasts and I listen to a lot of books that are by the people who have done things like this, and I've always been fascinated by stuff like that. But I wonder sometimes, like, what kind of person, like how many people would you have to go through in order to find somebody willing and able to keep their cool while in high stress situations in space? I mean, I can almost think of no worse death than to lose connection with a tether or something like that and to float out into space away from the aircraft and like just that's it. That would be horrifying. That is one that is depicted in movies quite often, where they get untethered somehow, and it's pretty terrifying. But the premise of Ad Astra I thought was really interesting. I thought it was a good movie just because of how philosophical it was. It was deeper than just science fiction. It had a lot more deep thinking behind it. Thought-provoking films are the best kind, I think, even if they are about space travel. And I think sometimes, because of how they do films now, they can't do films like they used to. Like, they can't just do random love stories. They can't do kind of boring, not boring, but not action-packed films. If you've noticed, they have pretty much all, like, really huge films now that are going to make a lot of money just at the box office. Because streaming services just don't pay like the DVDs did. I heard, I think it was Ben Affleck or somebody talk about that. How the movie industry can't make films like they used to because it's often costing $100 million to make a movie. And so you have to make that before you get into profit. And it's really hard to make that much on a film that's not crazy, like, you know, Marvel or, you know, some wild film. So, Ad Astra is kind of, in my opinion, a workaround on that. Like, they've used science fiction to get across a much deeper, thought-provoking topic that is this guy's consciousness and the things he's struggling with. A lot of the things that many people struggle with. He basically his inner thoughts, how messed up he was, and like how he had so many anger issues, and he would notice people every once in a while would have their own issues. They've all got their thing going on. And this guy, his dad was an astronaut, and his dad was a real douche. But spoiler alert, by the way, I'm probably going to give away a lot of the movie. He goes out to find his dad, and his dad has his own dilemmas, because finding higher intelligence or other intelligent life, other consciousness in the universe, it was his life's work, and he became obsessed with it. And he couldn't find a way to live with himself without finding other consciousness. A lot of people would say that's a hole that God was made to fill. I'm not going to argue that point, but I'm not going to argue against it. But so anyways, this guy kind of goes crazy because he is unable to find intelligent life, and his son goes out to get him because he's also an astronaut, and he's been tasked with this mission, basically. And so he goes out and finds out his dad is really just a douche and is causing all kinds of havoc, so it has to let him go. But it just a lot of the things that Brad Pitt deals with in the movie, that's something that people struggle with a lot, dealing with something that has to do with their parents. I think it's up to every person to heal and become better in the ways that you want to become better. And that's really what the movie is about, is a lot of topics like that you could miss if you're not watching, if you don't really understand the movie fully. But I thought it was really good. It was a really good movie, and the thought-provoking aspect of the movie was definitely my favorite. Of course, sometimes I do just want to watch a movie and watch some aliens blow up. That's fun too. Anyways, guys, I'm on the road, heading back to camp. Catch you on the next video. Peace.